Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and of course PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So, be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, and review us. Everything I tell you every week, wherever we're at, and if we're not in a place that you want to listen to us, your favorite one, let me know. I'll get us on there. I don't really give a shit where we end up going. It's fine. Just, we're fucking out in the wind, Mike. I don't fucking care, you know? And follow us on Twitter, at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. I mean, unless it's like some, like, neo-Nazi propaganda site or something like that, I wouldn't like to be associated with that, personally. And neither would you, I'm sure. But, you know, fuck it. Anyways, though, as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime, Mike P-Pack. Mike, what's good? What's going on? And what have you been playing, my friend?
Yeah, not much has, been going on for me. I've just been kind of on the real life grind.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for me, as far as games are concerned, I haven't been playing a whole lot of stuff new. Been playing some Rogue Spear at Night, which is, Tom Clancy game from 1999. Well, actually, I guess it's probably from 2000. But yeah, I mean, just been playing that in the evenings with a group of guys. Have about 16 people that come and go each night, which is actually kind of big considering how old the game is, and the fact that there's no developer support anymore at this point in time. Pretty much just people with some of the source code adjusting things and nobody going too crazy with editing it, but just making sure it runs on Voobly. So yeah, just been playing a lot of that. Got back into playing a little bit of Halo 3 since Microsoft 2v2, the doubles MOG playlist has been live. Been enjoying some of that. And then also outside of that, just recently today, actually, reinstalled Apex. And just played a little bit of Control on it and just having some fun playing that game mode, which is different than the VR. But just been enjoying that. But really haven't been playing too much in the way of new games currently. But looking for that to change very, very soon.
Right.
Oh, actually. Sorry, I did give The Long Dark a shot.
Hell yeah, she did.
And I've been enjoying that game. Something about... I've only gotten to like the first, spoiler alert, there's a town that you end up going to, which is all the extent of spoilers you're going to get. And that's all the further I really got. So I just kind of got the game mechanics down and I talked to the first person in the town you speak to. And in general, I was pretty happy to play the game and pretty happy to get some of the mechanics down. I thought it was super interesting to take Survivor, I guess a survival game, to the next level by introducing these different mechanics. And I will say, in a real life situation, it would definitely be hard to do, but you'd have to do what you got to do. But the beginning part, it's teaching you how to, forage for food, and you have to hit rabbits with a rock to stun them and catch them, and then unfortunately dispatch the rabbit before eating it to survive, because hunger is a part of the game. And I just that was probably the part I didn't like at all. The way they did the animation and everything almost makes you want to be a vegetarian, because the rabbit will like look at you before you dispatch the rabbit, and it's kind of,
well, hey there, mister, it's nice to see you.
And it has this cute little squeak before you dispatch of it, and it's like, oh man, this sucks. But yeah, I think it's super interesting. I think they did a really good job at focusing between, so far at least, storytelling and some crazy mechanics in the game and the engine that are super hardcore, but the storytelling will sometimes disconnect you from how hard the game is, and I'm playing on hard difficulty.
Naturally.
Like an alpha Chad.
Yeah, well, you know, beta virgins, you know.
Literally. So for me, that's what I've been up to, just kind of grinding and doing that. And not much else has been going on in my gaming career, but I'm sure, you know, you're usually good for the show and what kind of variety you bring into the life.
Well, you'd be, you know, normally I'd agree with you. Normally it's like, yeah, you know, you're the one who plays the tried and true, and you've always been the, you know, not, I don't want to say more with less, but like you find a wheelhouse to the games you stick in and you grind the fuck out of those. Like you're very much, there's a wheelhouse for your gaming and you're in it and you're very good at it. And like you stick in that, like, and you play other stuff, but you get what I mean. You find a certain sect of gaming and you kind of stick in it. I kind of poke around in different areas all the fucking time, but shocker, you know, instead of, you know, when I look at the stack of games that I still have to get through, like, there's games that I'm looking at right now on my shelf and like just even into like my digital backlog and stuff like that, that I'm like, yeah, I need to get around to doing that. I need to get around to playing this, yada yada. Like, I've been wanting to actually go back and play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, because as much as I love the newer Assassin's Creed games, and as much as I love Norse mythology, like I was really excited for it. Didn't click with me at first, but I want to go back and play that. Just like looking at all the shit that I do want to play and probably should be playing now for, you know, just coverage on the show and whatnot. Would it shock you, Mike, that I booted up The Witcher 3 again and just started a new save yet again?
No, I for one, I'm not surprised about it.
well, I for one was not clearly expecting that, obviously. But no, it's, and I've talked about it before. That game's just a fucking everlasting gobstopper for me. That it's almost like Adam with Fallout New Vegas, in a way that I could just boot it up, probably find something different each time I go through it and play. Even though the game is linear with the character that you play as, it's so very open in how you approach each situation that each playthrough will naturally feel different each time you go through and play it. Even if it's the same Geralt that you play with, him as a character changes each time I play it. And very much in a way of, you know, not from a sense of like, oh, I went and did the bad storyline or bad, what's it called? What do you want to call it? The morality system. Like, you know, I went on the bad path or this or that. I've been wanting to do more of a gray area playthrough where, you know, sometimes I'll just be like, yeah, fuck you, man. I'm fucking, yeah, you're not paying me enough. To do this contract, I need double or whatever. And then at times I'm also like, no, you know, you've been through enough. Don't pay me. Don't worry about it. But more that I feel like is in line with the lore of that universe. So I don't know what made me kind of think of it yet again, being like, you know what? I'm ready for another playthrough. Like I'm itching for it. So naturally I booted up and, you know, I'm right back into it. And granted, only a couple nights I've been playing through it, and I've been taking my time doing a bunch of side quests. I've been grinding more fucking Gwent than usual. So I've been trying to like get better at playing Gwent. And I'm sure too, obviously, with the announcement of the next Witcher game being in development now, that also fucking, you know, probably put that in my mind space of like, fuck, I should go back and play that. But yeah, in general, going back to doing that, it's been fun, been great. And I'm really enjoying, obviously, playing through that yet again. Molly and I are working our way still through LA Noire. We are not at the part that made us quit yet, whenever you, Adam, and I played through it. So it's coming, though. I already, it's right there. I could see it coming. And Molly's even like, I don't know why you guys didn't like this game. And I'm like, oh, just wait. Just you wait. Don't worry. So we've been kind of plugging through that a little bit and here and there. And then on top of that, too, I mean, just Destiny and, you know, kind of picking around things. And obviously last weekend we all played Tabletop Sim and Risk, which was fun, which I would like to try to do again this weekend at some point. But that obviously was really fun to do. But and then Elden Ring too, just kind of still poking around in there. Granted, very much have fell off more than obviously from when I first started up. But I see that game still, and I've said it before, it's one of those games that, in my mind, I'm like, oh man, I'm ready to get to the end. I'm ready to see the end of this. But it's one of those games that I don't want to say, I'd feel a disservice doing it to, but more or less like the character and the adventure that I have, I'd be shorting out a lot on it. And like, there's been a couple of guys that I know, whether content creators or what, that are huge FromSoft fans and Soulsborne fans that are just now like starting to finish it. And they're like, oh yeah, I had a 150-hour playthrough. Like, because I just wanted to soak it in, and obviously some bosses took a while and things like that, but I didn't want it to end. And I was like, that was one of the big things that about our review that I think we all kind of agreed on was it's that idea of this game is very much about more of the journey, not necessarily the end and the destination. So, I'm slowly, I think I've come to the realization that I'm not going to beat that game for a while, but in a good way, that when I'm ready to open the next chapter of my adventure, not to be too metaphorical, but like when I do go to jump back into that world, it gives me something exciting to do. Not from the sense of like, oh, I'm burnt out, or oh, I want to. It's just a dense game, but at the same time too, I feel good about walking away from it now, knowing that there are still vast portions of that world that have yet to be even scratched. It's mind blowing how much content's in there, and I'm just super excited to eventually get back into it. I mean, and I'm sure that'll be relatively soon that I jump back into it and finish it up, but there's also 10 other things that I want to play too. So, and naturally, like I said, the goddamn Witcher 3 has to come along, and yet again, Geralt has to just fucking derail all of the shit that I do in my life, fuck. Sure, I'll give another 50 hours to a quick playthrough there, yeah, no problem. So, anywho, Mike, that's all we've been playing. Let's jump in to the news this week, and we don't really have to. I don't think this is going to shock anyone. I really don't. I don't think it'll shock anybody who's listening to this, who has read this already. But E3 has been officially canceled. And we're not just talking the physical E3, because we obviously knew that wasn't going to happen. We'd be hearing much more about that now already. But the digital version of E3 has been canceled as well. So this write-up comes from Rebecca Valentine over at IGN. As always, link in the description. Go give her a click. She does fucking incredible work over at IGN. And make sure you check out all of her work there. But make sure you give her a click and go into it and check it out. After previously canceling its in-person E3 2022 event, the ESA has now informed its partners that there will be no digital event equivalent this year either, meaning that E3 2022 has been fully canceled. The news broke via a tweet from Razer PR lead Will Powers, who said that an email has been sent out announcing the cancellation of a digital E3 event. IGN has independently verified the contents of this email as well. The ESA had initially planned for an in-person E3 event this year after having no event in 2020 due to COVID-19 and a digital one in 2021. However, this was canceled in January, with the ESA at the time unable to make a public statement on whether or not there would be a digital equivalent. According to sources speaking to IGN at the time, discussions around E3 had been fraught throughout the year, with parties normally involved finding the ESA's ongoing silence regarding their plans frustrating. Sources connected to the event tells IGN that discussions about a possible digital equivalent have been ongoing ever since, but without strong momentum to drive them. Instead, the ESA seems to be making plans to regroup for a larger comeback in 2023. They also said that last year. An update to the article, though. The ESA has shared an official statement with IGN confirming E3 2022's cancellation and announcing that E3 will return in 2023 with a reinvigorized showcase. Quote, "We will devote all of our energy and resources to delivering a revitalized physical and digital E3 experience next summer. Whether enjoyed from the show floor or your favorite devices, the 2023 showcase will bring the community, media, and industry back together in an all-new format and interactive experiences. We look forward to presenting E3 to fans around the world live from Los Angeles in 2023. The ESA adds that the 2022 showcase has been canceled so the organization can, quote, focus its resources on the 2023 show. So, as somebody who works in their full-time big boy job, works in and around, has vast elements within my job around event management and event planning and, you know, all that kinds of stuff, logistical facility work, yada, yada. The biggest red flag alone already, you read this and, you know, when they canceled the in-person one in January, and you don't hear anything about a follow-up, 6 months is not that long of a time. As somebody who's worked and been in the planning process of major events, big events, we're planning stuff like over a year out. Or, you know, a year is probably about the average whenever it comes to larger scale events that you're looking and planning out towards, just from the actual hands-on planning perspective. When you're talking actual, like, hey, logistically, like, you know, we're going to plan this stuff out in terms of reservations and, you know, building events around a certain location and hotels and all the back end stuff of that. I mean, there's a reason why the Super Bowl, the college football national championship, the NCAA championships, all of those kind of events are booked years in advance. Years in advance. The Olympics, years in advance. Because there's so much that goes around to building up to them. And obviously E3 isn't necessarily that, but for a very long time, it was, quote unquote, the Super Bowl of our industry. It was the WrestleMania. It was the World Series of our industry kind of thing. Like, it was the crux of what the gaming world kind of, that year's narrative really started around. You know, leading into the fall when all the games would come out and whatnot, but we're usually hearing about a lot of big titles and, you know, kind of just like I said, the narrative of the year really starts, in my opinion, with E3. So it's really interesting that, not that people are shocked by this, Mike, but more so the fact that this wasn't something that was pushed earlier on in terms of like, hey, this is, you know, hey, we haven't heard anything in February. What's going on? Hey, we haven't heard anything. Me personally, if I would have heard something that, hey, we don't have an answer in January, it's canceled. Like it is. It's canceled. And I would want them to say just then, it's canceled. We're tooling for next year. Because that makes sense. If they're trying to fully change what the concept of E3 is, you know, 18 months is probably what they would need to actually do that and fully figure out what the fuck they want to do with it. So we've talked about this obviously a multitude of times before, Mike, but where do you stand, I guess, right now on one, obviously the whole situation involving E3, what the fuck's going on with that, and, you know, what does it mean to what's going on in the gaming world, but even more so, like, what does that say for where not only us, but the gaming world on the consumer side is to, one, getting their information on games, how they want to consume, you know, this, which really, they're just, all it is a big PR and marketing expo. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all it is commercials, but how we as consumers want to, and fans want to get that information. And really, I guess what this really means for the rest of the year when we kind of look at, hey, you know, how the fuck are we finding out about all this stuff? Is this, obviously, is, you know, Summer Games Fest with Jeff Keighley going to take an even bigger role? Like, you know, is G4, now that they're back and up and rolling, are they going to play into it? Like, what's your kind of mindset on this now, yet again, another year later? You know, really, I don't want to say another year without E3, but as somebody who, quote unquote, attended E3 last year, they're really, I mean, compared to what it usually is, it was definitely different, to say the least.
Yeah, I think, you know, to speak about this properly, I would have to say, first and foremost, obviously, this was a staple of gaming culture, which is kind of what you alluded to. But to push it further, this is kind of where a lot of what was coming out in future months or a year in that case would be, really brought to light. We would hear rumblings like, oh, we hear 343 might be making Halo 2 Anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like a rumor for a while. And then all of a sudden at E3, boom, we got that information.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever Halo Reach was being flighted on PC, you could play it at E3 before it was even, really being... I mean, it was discussed that it was happening, but, that was something that, kind of took on a life of its own thanks to E3. For a long time, since we've been kids, any of the games that were starting to come out, not only would they be in Game Informer, but it was normally on Game Informer thanks to E3. Like E3 would bring it out, and then after that, we would hear about it, in Game Informer.
Mm-hmm.
So for us to kind of take a turn kind of away from E3, definitely a shock, especially to someone like me who definitely look forward to that E3 every year just to kind of get a lay of the land of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But something we've talked about at length on this show is how a lot of the studios and a lot of the game development companies have been taking matters into their own hands with announcements, whether it be EA Play, the Sony, Play On, Nintendo Direct, even Xbox is throwing their hat into the ring. They were one of the last ones to really not turn their back on E3, but want to go in their own direction on top of having E3. So with all that being said and all that being considered, the writing was kind of on the wall for us. We talked about this last year, and when we talked about it at the beginning of the year in January, whenever they first announced that they were going to be at minimum postponing E3, right? We talked about is it ever going to come back? And I think we were both pretty positive saying that E3 was such a staple. It was hard to imagine a world in which it wouldn't exist,
right? In in some capacity,
right.
And I think we really did see that last year of hey, we're hanging on to the thread and just the namesake of E3 to say E3 is a thing.
And what it meant,
right? Exactly.
And going forward, I think we were probably foolishly optimistic about it because the writing was certainly on the wall, and we both conceded the point of, if all these companies are doing it on their own, what the hell is the point of bothering with doing it at E3? And we both agreed and kind of were holding on to the nostalgia is oh, well, people will probably still want to go to E3 or still want to do E3 just because of everything. But if there's one thing that we should learn with, it's not even just COVID-19. Let's be honest, COVID-19 put a lot of things on the fast track to being non-existent. E3 clearly one of those things. E3 is going to exist no more. It was probably going to stop, cease its existence. But COVID-19, like a lot of other things, kicked that into overdrive. Now all of a sudden it's just gone. It probably by 2025, it probably would have been gone without COVID, 2026. But now it's gone already because of COVID-19 did it no favors. It kind of made everyone start to think of everything outside the box. Another thing, the downtown skyscrapers, I know a lot of companies are going back to work, but the more jobs that are going remote, companies are starting to see their employees' productivity go up. The skyscrapers in downtown cities, especially smaller cities, I just don't see how they're going to fill those.
Oh yeah, this is a little inside baseball IRL stuff, but my father-in-law who works for a healthcare or a health insurance agency, whatever you want to call it, healthcare provider, actually, I guess. But on the insurance side of it, with IT and whatnot, their building, their major building is in downtown Pittsburgh, and he's been working at home now. He went from somebody who was always downtown, always there, to now just not. He's we moved out of that build. We moved at least our department out and moved multiple departments out. And technically we have office space in, on the not the south side, but technically, yeah, kind of over by, no, I take it back. This is me forgetting, over on the North Shore, I mean. So they have technical office space for them, but the majority of that building, like, they're filtering out. And he's like, why would they pay for that whenever they're having a lot of people working at home? Because, like you're saying, they're finding the productivity. They're finding, hey, it's cheaper for us to just let these fucking people work from home. Like, kind of thing. Like, we don't need the overhead of the rent for this building. Like, I totally agree. Just a side note, you're totally right on that.
Yeah, and like with my realm of tech work, a lot of people have been working from home before COVID. Mm-hmm. Once COVID came, that really kicked it into overdrive. And now my boss just had a conversation. He said, we're going to try to do some team building stuff for people that live close to each other to try to have some type of cohesion. Because it is really weird when you work remotely. And I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but like he said, what could we do? He said, oh, well, the technical director was talking about maybe flying everyone to Austin, Texas to have like a team building event where you get to meet some of the higher ups and get to meet each other. Yeah. And now that's something that will probably in the long run is going to be way cheaper than owning building space anywhere. Mm-hmm. They're having buildings. Everything's moving to Austin, Texas. That's the thing that really dawned on me was why wasn't E3 moved to Texas? Because Austin has turned into LA without all the homeless people and all that stuff. There's no income tax in the state of Texas. That's another real big draw to Austin and why people are moving there. And it's a huge tech hub. Apple built a huge campus there to kind of move away from Cupertino, California. Mm-hmm. I'm sure once some of the older guard dies off and gets out of there, they'll move everything to Austin because they don't want to pay the taxes in California, which is the same thing E3 should have done. E3 should have just moved out of California because there's no, state income tax in Texas, and that's kind of where everything's moving to Austin, Texas. That's the hub for pretty much everything. That's where Bethesda has a second company outside of the one that's right up the road from me.
Yeah, Gearbox.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that have moved there, and that's where I start to see
fucking id Tech or
right.
Yeah, id in general. I don't know if I said tech, but
I'm bringing all of this back to make the point of things aren't the same. And unfortunately, different generations of people have to live through different life events. When you look back and you point and you put your finger on it and say, that's when everything changed. 9/11 was one of those points, and we lived through that. And now COVID-19, just like the Spanish influenza back in 1919, is one of those things that there will be history books and there will be history studies done on COVID-19 for the rest of time, just like people study the Spanish flu. And it was really interesting being from Westmoreland County in Pennsylvania because I was still in college during 2019 whenever we were celebrating, quote unquote, 100 years since the Spanish flu. Yeah. And, my college at St. Vincent College, you would look at the yearbook from 1918 to 1919 when they still did yearbooks, and there was just hundreds of people that didn't exist anymore. Like they were like, it was like a Thanos snap. Yeah. Like that many people died. And we at that point in time talked like this would never happen again. And then shortly thereafter, we started hearing about COVID in China, and here we are. It happened again, almost 100 years apart, which is almost comical because a lot of people disregard history.
Side note to that, do you remember, at least when it was going around and it was actually like confirmed a legitimate thing, the lady who like predicted that there would be a fucking pandemic in 2020?
I didn't.
Okay. Yeah, there was some lady in a book from like 2010 who wrote that and was like, yeah, in early, the first half of 2020, the world will be hit with a pandemic. Like
it's crazy. It's
again?
Crazy.
Where the fuck is this lady right now? Like we need to take her in for questioning.
I feel that in how crazy things can be like that. But again, this is why people should really do their. I'm not saying you have to be some type of history buff that spouts out years and dates for everything, but at the same time, it has gone to prove time and time again that
while sipping on this gin.
Yeah, time's a cycle, and things seem to happen over and over again. And E3 being officially canceled, digital and physical, is pretty crazy. But I'm hoping what this means is, if it's dead forever, it's dead forever, and that's going to be a total shame. But I hope they use this time to revamp and come back in Austin, Texas in 2023. Me and you can go cover it as media, and, you know, it'll be in Austin, Texas. That is an up-and-coming city. A lot of people in Texas, like my cousins that live in Texas that don't live in Austin, hate Austin, Texas, because it is LA light. But it's the way everything goes, man. Things are coming and going, and COVID-19 has shown us that even the biggest staples that we thought were like impenetrable as kids, they're starting to topple. Businesses and companies and everything kind of, again, these are all things that were dying and going away. And instead of us getting to hold on for a little bit longer, COVID-19 was kind of gave it the old Yeller treatment and took it out back. I hope E3 bounces back, but it doesn't seem like, you know, that's going to be the case. And this opens the door to all the companies having their own showcases, which is which way we thought it was going anyway. It's obvious that that's where it's going. And we had this discussion in January. Why the hell would anyone bother with showing up at E3 when you have to pay people to go? It's in LA. It's a fucking nightmare for a lot of people to get there. It's a fucking nightmare to set up. The security's it's all just such a nightmare because it's Los Angeles.
Off.
It's just such a disaster because flying in LA is a bitch. Traffic in LA is a bitch. The homeless problem in LA is a bitch. The security, the theft, all that stuff's a problem in LA. It's just a problem. I'm hoping they use this time to rebrand and go forward. But again, it might be one of those things that because of COVID-19, it died a lot sooner than it should have, and it might never come back.
Yeah, and before we kind of continue on that thought, just to kind of put it out there on Austin, I had to look it up because it was one of those things that's like, I know more than I'm thinking of, and sure as shit I did, but just running through some of the, and we're talking about there's like, I think like 63, or no, like 70 something, quote unquote, I don't want to say major, but like actual development studios. But like, let's run through some of the names here in Austin alone already. Because they've started to stack up. Arcane Studios, Austin studio that handled Deathloop, Dishonored, I believe. Well, no, I think the Deathloop, the main team was the one out of France who did the Dishonored. That's right. Arcane Austin is the one that did Prey. So one of Arcane's, major studios, Bethesda, BGS Austin, who handled the Doom series. Like, obviously, it's built into that, I would think, at this point. Because I don't think they have them separate on... No, they don't. So they're building that into it. Yeah, because they have Doom listed under here as well. And Fallout 76. BioWare Austin, who handles Star Wars The Old Republic, at least that one. Blizzard's Austin studio that handles, obviously, some stuff for Warcraft, or World of Warcraft, and also does some StarCraft stuff. Blue Point Games, who was just recently acquired by Sony, who handled their Shadow of the Colossus remake, and then most recently their Demon Souls remake. Boss Fight Entertainment's out there. Certain Affinity, who handled the Halo 1 remaster and is really kind of starting to become a major support studio for Halo in general, with a lot of their side projects and whatnot, and even some support on their main ones. EA has two studios out there. One, they have one PC one that does like a lot of more, I think, like freeware games, but there's also EA Sports Austin out there that kind of, I think, handles more of the business end of it, but still. What else? There was a couple more here that I know I saw. Panic Button, who handled the Switch ports of Doom and Warframe, and I believe Wolfenstein, the new Colossus, I believe so. And then I thought there was one more. Unity, that's right. Unity is kind of built out there. That's their major hub right now, if I remember correctly, for their engine to work out of. Like, that they're doing a lot of their development from is out in Austin. So you're not wrong in saying that, oh shit, Retro Studios too. the Nintendo studio that's pretty much home now to handling Metroid in general, and then also, and specifically, Retro's going to be handling Metroid Prime 4. So that's coming, and then Donkey Kong Country. So, like, you bringing that up is actually a really interesting idea. And why I say idea is because we brought it up before that, and I think I remember saying this on a show, that I very much saw E3 in general when it finally does come back, when we finally see E3 make its quote-unquote return. And, you know, because I still do think, I don't think this is the end of E3. I don't. I say this every time, and somehow they still come back and they do something. But I truly don't believe this is the end of E3. I think this is the right response. I think this is, no, they should have done this a while ago. They should have done this right off the bat. They probably should have done this, if you ask me, last year. That should have been a no-brainer. But they need this year off to retool this. But you need to be upfront of it. Boom, we're done. We're not doing it this year. Yada, yada. We're going in. And then you shut the fuck up, go in your hole, and you fucking get to work. Like, that's just head down, get to work on planning what this could be. And one of the things I always brought up beforehand is I could really see this going a PAX route. The Penny Arcade Expo that you see so many times that is, you know, more of a fan event. Yes, they'll have, you know, representation there from, you know, I know Gearbox loves to go there. I'm sure Microsoft, Sony's there at times. Nintendo, a lot of indies. Like, it's more of a hands-on experience for fans. And what we kind of saw E3 kind of moving towards a little bit with their fan days, that you were able to go there and being open to the public. What I think would be more interesting, and you bring up Austin makes me think about this, I would love to see E3, and they're not going to do this, obviously, in 2023 because they're already committing to LA, and who knows, that could always change. But if you ask me, we're talking about, you know, I would like to, realistically, you're talking, you know, 14 months out, but realistically, you're talking a year out. Like, that's how mine works as somebody who does, you know, event planning and event management and whatnot. Like, you're talking a year out, so a year out from now, you're not changing an event or a venue or anything like that. You're locked in. There's contracts signed, yada yada. So, if you ask me, I would love to see them kind of transform this into something like a South by Southwest, where you have multiple things, and even like PAX. PAX does this too with PAX East, PAX West, PAX South. Like, they have these events throughout the year that are kind of centered on, hey, we want to take this almost like festival atmosphere. And I think that would be really cool for something like E3, where you could have one, like, I think it would be perfect to have it one in New York, like an E3 East, one in Austin, an E3 South, and then you could have the main one or whatever, kind of like, I think it's PAX West is the one that's kind of the main one out of all of them, but kind of have your E3 West that is what it culminates in. You could have, you know, E3 East in New York City in February, and then South in, you know, April or something like that. And then you get to, you know, West and you do something in June. And that could be your, you know, where you have, you know, studios kind of build around, hey, we're going to have our, you know, E3 conferences kind of built around there. And it doesn't have to be in person or anything like that from the conference standpoint, but more so, hey, we're going to build our showcases in general, our summer showcases that we show off the games we're having and this and that. We're going to build it around that week so we can at least, you know, funnel it in that way. Because I think that time frame of that 2-week time frame at the beginning of June is still going to be the video game week. I think that's just so natural that we have that week, and then we have a lull until the fall gets here, and then we have that couple weeks in late October to, you know, mid-November, really to Black Friday. That is the, you know, fall rush, really, that we're getting bombarded with the big titles of that year, the big, you know, Christmas Christmas bestseller titles that you see usually. So I have a soft place in my heart, just like you, Mike, we say, for E3. I'll be quite honest, this is more inside baseball stuff. Like, when I got the E3 confirmation for last year, even if it was online, even if it was whatever, that we were approved to go to E3, and more so not from the sense of like, I was open to it because I was like, hell, this is actually easier for me to, like you kind of talked about, Mike, it's easier for me to go and book Zoom meetings and Skype calls, and, not that anybody uses fucking Skype, but you get what I mean. I could book meetings with people that are so much easier for them to just either send me over a code or a stream or whatever that they want to show me and make my meetings and make my appointments to get, to see these games and whatnot is so much easier than, necessarily waiting in line or going around and, booking and running across a show floor, though there's excitement to that. But getting that and getting that confirmation, like, hey, we're involved now and we have the foot in the door of like, hey, maybe when next year rolls around and it's in person, we're good to go. We're going, and when I got that, I was like, it was exciting. I thought about, 5-year-old me, 6-year-old me, whenever it was that, or it would have been 5-year-olds, I guess, 5-year-old me getting his N64 on Christmas morning. And like those memories of just like working hard to get to that because E3 meant so much to me. And so many moments in my life, so many summers of us just going in Adam's basement or going over to my house or something like that. And, once they started streaming the events, just getting around and watching the Xbox showcase or the PlayStation showcase, Sony or the Nintendo Directs that started to come from it after they stopped doing, in-person conferences. Like there's just this magic that's around E3. And I think to a degree they've used that, I think they've kind of benefited from that a lot from the fans' standpoint. But, obviously, like you said, with COVID, that very much escalated and timeframes were moved up quite a bit, to say the least, in terms of, when we're expecting these things to kind of fade away, or at least new iterations of them come along. But, it's tough to see where E3 is now, but at the same time, like, it just makes so much sense too. And I wish, and I think eventually, like you said, we are going to see more and more and more companies, especially within gaming, not just, obviously in entertainment in general and whatnot, that so many companies now are starting to get out of California, just given, the state of our economy really right now and just the housing market in general. Like that alone already would make people drive clear out, wherever, anywhere but there. But you're going to start seeing, I think, the games industry now become more open within their locations and broader in the sense of we're going to see more and more studios on the East Coast. We're going to see more, not just the one-offs that we kind of saw for a long time or kind of the behind the curtain. We're going to have, it's going to be more common to see an Insomniac in North Carolina that I can't remember where. I think they're in Cary, North Carolina. I think. Oh, Durham, North Carolina. So
like basically right beside Cary.
Right, exactly. So yeah, where we're going to see more studios like that, more Bethesdas. We're going to see, we're going to see maybe a home to a big studio in Atlanta or, I'm not going to say Pittsburgh, but you never know. Something where one, obviously, it depends on the state of the economy and all that too, that the cost of living is cheaper. It's easier to sell people on coming here. And, of course, California and New York are sexy, like, things to throw out, like, working in LA and living in LA is a sexy idea. But at the same time, once you get there and people see the cost of living obviously is through the roof, but all the bullshit you have to deal with in terms of just getting to your job and doing your job, it's, you see, there's no wonder why so many people want to either exit the industry because of that or go remotely or want to find new opportunities that are, hey, I'm able to work remotely. Hey, I'm able to do this remotely. So, I definitely don't think you're wrong in any stretch of the imagination, Mike, but
hey, I just did the research because I saw my paycheck for here in Virginia and it pissed me off. So I did the research and here are, it's topical. It's not a complete and total old man yells at cloud tangent.
Man.
states that have no income tax.
Mm-hmm.
Alaska, Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, Tennessee, Tejas, and Wyoming. Flat income tax, so that means everyone pays the same amount no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado, Illinois, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Utah, and Washington. So there are your states that people are generally moving to for a lot of reasons. But as far as Texas and Florida are concerned, if you want to know why all the content creators live in Florida and Texas, there's your answer, because they don't have to fucking pay income tax on that shit.
Also,
that's why all the content creators are moving out of LA to Austin. That's why a lot of the content creators are moving to Florida.
Well, to be fair, then you have our boy Moist Critical Penguin Zero that is also just from Florida and probably is just like, fuck it, I don't feel like leaving. Like, I don't feel like going anywhere.
Well, he doesn't fly, so
true. That is very true. So
he drives everywhere.
Fucking psycho. I love Charlie, man. He's the best.
He's so it's almost cringe, because like half the time he has to have clean hands, and like he was doing a burger review and had to use a fork. It's like, bro, come the fuck.
I love him, man. He's the best. He just fucking kills me. But anyways, yeah. So it's just given, and I think so much, like you said too, Mike, like the state of the world is going to play into this so much more, and is going to be so accelerant in everything that's going on, and especially from a financial standpoint, that is really going on in our world, that we're going to end up seeing a lot of these bigger changes and shifts, I think, naturally in general without much push. Granted, E3's been getting pushed a little bit more and more each year in general, even leading up to, the, pandemic and whatnot. But in general, I think we're going to see just naturally, hey, we're going to, let's take our operation and we're going to do it out of, like you said, Texas. We're going to do it out of Florida. We're going to do it out of wherever. So it's, and especially too, you got to even think too, and this isn't even necessarily E3 standing, but like gaming in general with companies, when you think of how many contractors work within the gaming industry, like from that standpoint alone, like I would think that's a primary reason of, and it's shitty, obviously, because I would much rather have, people have full-time employment with benefits and whatnot and everything. But if we're going to see that, those practices continue and trend in the direction that they are going in with that, and more contract work be used, if they're basing it out of, a Texas or a Florida or something like that, there's less, hangover and, headspace and overhead that they got to worry about. That's the word I was looking for. Headspace or overhead that they're got to worry about with that. And that's a little bit more enticing for contract workers to go through. Especially too, you look at, like, this is kind of a little bit out there, but you look at, there's a reason why, the WWE does all of their, NXT operations, their performance center, all of that. And you see so many, wrestling promotions come out of there because they're all independent contractors. They all have independent contracts through the WWE, and so many of them live out of Florida because there's no income tax, because they know they could be fucked at any moment with their contract. It's not, they don't have the safety net that so many other professional athletes have and whatnot, but so they try to make the most of it, knowing that at any moment they get the fucking rug pulled out right from underneath them. That they want to take the most money while they can and take that payday, obviously working for Vince McMahon kind of thing. So it's just really interesting to kind of think about where that's going. But in general, yeah, I think I would like to see E3 trend in the direction of a PAX, of a South by Southwest, whatever it is, SXSW, that it becomes obviously more of a fan event, and you leave the kind of back end things to, which I want them to do, and they kind of trended in that direction before they got shut down, at least from the in-person standpoint, that you have the event and you have some area for media where it's not, both aren't overlapping at any point, where media has 3 days to go and do whatever, or 2 days to go do whatever, and fans have 3 days or whatever, where there's no there's no crossover between those two because that just hurts everything. Or if you want to see behind closed doors, hands-on previews and things like that for, from a media standpoint, and you want to do that remotely because that could be easily done, as we've seen. Cool, do that for the first day or two or whatever, and then have a fan event after that fans can come to that is like, Inside X, or I don't want to say Inside Xbox, but like an XO event that Xbox puts on, or even like a PSX that was a PlayStation Experience that Sony used to put on. That is something like that that's so much more fan oriented and hands on. I think that makes far too much sense because we have seen that people are ready to some degree, more and more and more, and especially now with all the data that's starting to come out with vaccinations that support, hey, this is all working. This is all science is proving this stuff is working, and we're seeing little by little so many less hospitalizations and things like that people are wanting to go back out and do things. We're now starting to, I don't want to say we'll never get to the realm of normalcy ever again, I don't think, but or what we saw, but we're going to see more and more and more and more normalcy come back to the world in terms of events and going places, and not, that's just going to be second nature again. And I think we're almost right there for that. We're right on the cusp of that. So it makes a lot of sense that people are going to want to do these fan events. People are going to want to pay to go and do these fan events. I think it just makes too much sense. But Mike, before we wrap up the show, one thing I did want to bring up, this was just really interesting this week coming out that I kind of wanted to bring up and kind of end the show on, just in a sense, because as always, obviously, I'm a Destiny guy, and we're both Bungie guys from back in the day, but something going on right now with Bungie and the whole DMCA issue that so many people are having issues with. But Bungie lawsuit aims to unmask YouTube copyright claims abusers. So this comes from John Fingus over on Engadget, as always, link in the description. YouTube's copyright claim system has been repeatedly abused for bogus takedown requests, and Bungie has had enough. They've had enough, man. Torrent Freak reports the game, and also too, Torrent Freak, one, I've never heard of the publication, sure, I'm sure they do great work, but the fact that you have torrents in your name, and that's, kind of an illegal activity, and I'm just saying, the balls, man. The balls. There goes Yosemite Sam walking around here. Torrent Freak reports the game studio has sued 10 anonymous people for allegedly leveling false Digital Millennial Copyright Act, that's the DMCA claims, against a host of Destiny 2 creators on YouTube and even Bungie itself. The company said the culprits took advantage of a, quote, hole in YouTube's DMCA security that let anyone claim to represent a rights holder, effectively letting, quote, any person anywhere misuse the system to suit their own ends. According to Bungie, the perpetrators created a Gmail account in mid-March that was intended to mimic the developer's copyright partner, CSC. They then issued DMCA takedown notices while falsely claiming to represent Bungie, and even tried to fool creators with another account that insisted the first was fraudulent. YouTube did not notice. I don't know why, but metaphorically, I just imagine that being like the fucking clip of Sting taking off the Sting mask to reveal he's just Sting. Haha, we covered our tracks with ourselves. YouTube didn't take notice to the fake credentials and slapped video producers with copyright strikes, even forcing users to remove videos if they wanted to avoid bans. YouTube removed the strikes, suspended the Gmail accounts, and otherwise let creators recover, but not before Bungie struggled with what it called a, quote, circular loop of support. The firm said it only broke the cycle by having its global finance director email key Google personnel, and Google still, quote, would not share info to identify the fraudsters. Bungie hoped a DMCA subpoena and other measures would help identify the attackers and punish them, including damages that could reach $150,000 for each false takedown notice. And Engadget did ask for a comment, and at the original point of this article, they didn't get it, but there is an update that they've got. Quote, we take abuse of our copyright claim takedown process seriously and terminate tens of thousands of accounts every year for violating our policies, which prohibits submitting false information in a takedown request, a YouTube spokesperson told Engadget over email. We'll continue to work to prevent abuse of our systems, and we've committed to taking appropriate action against those who knowingly misuse our tools. The lawsuit also, too, won't force YouTube to reform its DMCA system, but Bungie is clearly hoping this will add some pressure. As it is, the company believes the fake takedown request did lasting damage by creating, quote, chilling effects for Destiny's YouTube stars who were afraid to post new videos and damaging the community at large. So, just as we kind of wrap up the show, Mike, I wanted to at least get your thoughts on this because I think this is complicated on both sides, to say the least. But, and it kind of, once again, shows you the problems with the DMCA, like the issues that we're facing with DMCA in general, that these content creators, obviously, who aren't necessarily making money off of, they're not making money off of music or anything like that that is used in there. They're just simply having that involved in their streams and whatnot, just kind of showing how ridiculous it can be at times and kind of opening up some, clearly showing some of the holes that can be used on that. But just kind of want to get your take on this, your 2 cents on this before we wrap up the show, and just how fucking wild it is to be a streamer even right now, like, given all this shit.
It's to the point where, like, even when I stream, even though it's been few and far between lately, unfortunately, hey, I just play DMCA music. Like, if you're gonna go out of your day to come DMCA strike me, I got 3 to go. Fucking get me twice, and then I'll buckle down. But if you want to come get me, come get me. I don't give a shit. Because it's to the point where,
Big whoop, want to fight about it?
This is kind of what people were really, like, people were complaining about this, and at least saying, like, this is what was going to happen with DMCA. This is why in the United States of America, I'm sorry if you're an international listener, then you might not quite grasp how things work here. You think we eat Big Macs for every meal and shoot each other with guns constantly. And, I mean,
those aren't false
those aren't technically false, but no, like, this is why certain laws don't get passed. This is why certain parties of political people fight tooth and nail to prevent things from being passed, even though the common man might say, man, that just makes total sense. Why would something ever be, why would this not be legal?
Right.
And then you hear a politician say, well, then you start bending the rules and you start going from, if you make this legal, then all of a sudden people can bend the rules, and now all of a sudden this other thing that you had no idea would even be possible is now legal because people will bend the rules. And then you as a citizen are like, but that's not what it's meant. That's not how it's supposed to be. But when you have an analytical mind, or if you're familiar with the laws at all, if you're familiar with how scummy politics are at all, because there's a lot of people that walk around the United States of America, in the world, but specifically in America, that pay no attention to politics, they pay no attention to the law, and they just think this is right, this is wrong, that's how it should be. But when you actually get into the muck and the mud of, like, what actually happens in politics, it makes total sense that you start bending things to kind of fit your mold, right?
Right.
It's like they take 1,000-piece puzzles, and you have like 2 pieces left, and you have this piece, and you just fucking force it, and you just break the piece, and you're like, well, it goes there now. That's what people do with the law and with politics here, is they just break stuff or they bend stuff to make it fit what they want it to. And this is just like typical DMCA bullshit, where when I saw it like start to come out, I thought on one hand, it does make a lot of sense. There are content creators. I like Metallica as a band, but they pretty much ruined media from when they sued Napster. I didn't think that people should be able to download their music for free.
Right.
But now all of a sudden, like, look at Spotify. People barely make any money off of it. And I only pay a little bit a month for Spotify Premium.
Yeah.
But hey, if you don't want your stuff on Spotify, don't list it there. And then I won't listen to it. That's your choice. You can make some money off of me, or you can make no money off of me.
Right.
But if you're not on Spotify, I'm not going to listen to you. But this all is just such a crazy situation to be in as content creators. And again, I'm not a big content creator, so I don't have to worry about DMCA strikes constantly. But there's ways to get around getting DMCA strikes for music. You can run other programs in the background that prevent your VODs on Twitch from being uploaded with them. You can put your VODs behind a paywall like I did.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways to get around it, but like, it's just so crazy that this went from trying to prevent music and TV shows or movies from being shown on stream to now this is where we get to people abusing systems.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tale as old as time. That's how I've gotten banned on League of Legends, is you get mass reported and the system's faulty and it's just a bot that just triggers a ban for you.
Yeah.
And it's the same exact situation here. And Bungie is actually kind of big dick for this because, like, it's negatively affecting their content creators, which is negatively affecting their game, because people won't want to create content for their game.
Right.
And if people don't want to create content for that game, people aren't playing their game. And if people aren't creating content for their game, people might not get exposed to their game, so they might not give their game a chance. Do you see how it snowballs out of control so quickly?
And
it's so
more
cool by Bungie.
Right. And and that's what I was going to say, where it's great to have kind of like, it's great to have a big player like this kind of speak up and say, like, no, we're going to actually pursue this shit. And not from the sense of like, oh, like, we're wanting money out of this. We're wanting money out of X, Y, and Z. No, it seems like it's more of a like, no, we want to set an example because we want to show how the system is broken right now, how this system does not work. That, yes, there is a problem with, people illegally, there's a very small percentage of people out there who are making financial gains of significant amounts off of, people illegally from, creative entities or whatever. They're using a system to try to catch those people on the 99, and it doesn't work that way. And they're kind of using this to highlight, hey, the system's more broke than anything, tongue-in-cheek way, and I appreciate that, because if not, we wouldn't hear about this shit. We wouldn't, it'd just be another fucking thing, and we think, oh, Bungie's being assholes about it, and yada yada, and it's like, no, it's these people who are spamming it to just get back. It's almost like a very, very, obviously, the example I'm going to say is much worse than that and could lead to much worse consequences, like life and death in, some ways, but like, it's just people trying to get at streamers, like almost like they do with swatting. Like, they're just trying to make life difficult for streamers who do this, just to piss them off and give them a reason not to, do this, because they either liked when they played one game and now they play Destiny, or they do X, Y, and Z, or they don't want them to do this, or they just don't like their content and they just are trolls and they want to piss people off, and they're just trying to, beat the system kind of thing. And it just shows you how broken the system is, that there needs to be something better. And if we can't get something better, then we need to look at this on a much more micro level than macro, because it's hurting the macro portion of this much more than the micro portion is hurting the actual hurting the people who are being affected by this. So I don't know, man. Shit just sucks, everything's just fucking complicated anymore. Nobody can do shit, and it just sucks. Anyways, though, Mike, I think that's going to do it for episode this week. So why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, talk about all we talked about. Talked about E3, naturally. It seems like that is like a once-a-year topic, again, that we fall to. Bungie and everything going on with that. Where can people find you, talk about video games and all we talked about today on the internet?
You can find me at Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier, or you can find me where the Bluebird sings.
There we
at TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier, and the second O is an X. Shout out Adam Marsh.
Yeah, shout out to Adam Marsh. He ain't dead, he just ain't here. And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms, including at Travelus_ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travelus_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some games with me over on Xbox Live or any other platform, really, just look for regular old Travelus. That's TRAVLESS, and we'll play some games. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So, Be sure to subscribe to us, rate and review us wherever you get a podcast at. And if we're not on the platform you like to use, let me know. I'll get us on there. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything we're in the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. I like when I do the pregnant pauses. I'm hoping I'm reaching out to that like one person in the car who like is driving through a shitty service area and they're like, fuck, wait, did it go out? Did it go out? Like, oh shit, never mind. No, he's just dicking around on me, you know? What can I say? I gotta pull one over. I got him, Mike, you know? I gotta. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for episode this week. Thank you everyone so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to doctors, Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.